Andrew, do you want to talk?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so welcome guys to the 5th meeting of Carroll PMC. Today we're going to be discussing, or we have a special guest. She's a medical student, and she's going to sort of discuss her upbringing, her process of getting to medical school, and what's been like so far since she's been in it. So again, our agenda today, it's typical. We're going to have our opening message. We're going to have you guys meet Becca. We will have a question time at the end of that. It'll be about 15 to 20 minutes after her like 30-ish minutes off. And then we'll discuss about our next meeting's topic. And then final closing message to kind of end this evening. And before we begin, I just want to thank you guys for shifting your schedules a bit to have us meet early at this time. This just worked kind of best for us, and to be respectful of some of the other programs that are happening at Carroll this Thursday evening. So appreciate that. During this time, if you could just keep your mics muted if you're not talking, we greatly appreciate it. And then during that question time, the floor is yours. You can discuss and shout out questions as needed. But yeah.
Okay, so as Andrew had stated, we really appreciate you guys being flexible with your schedule and also attending and being here via Zoom. So to start, as we have indicated in the previous meetings, our goal is to inform, excite, empower, and involve all of you guys. We want to, the purpose of this meeting, Andrew had stated, was to really learn more about Rebecca's story and also what her path was to medical school. What's exciting is about this is that we get a little bit of insight from her and her own story, and hopefully we can find some insight in gaining our own experiences and what our path might turn out to be. And then empowering you guys, we all and we always welcome you to share your ideas and the focus that elevates the pre-med club and also the community here. And we want to involve all of you guys today by asking these questions, and also to Rebecca and the officers here and in future meetings as well. So before we dive in, just a little COVID-19 community update. There's been an increase of 8 cases of COVID-19 in Lewis and Clark County. Luckily, 0 deaths have occurred in the county since the last update. Smaller uptick from last week in the state of Montana. There's a total increase of 838 total cases, and unfortunately 16 deaths in the state since the last update. For important upcoming dates that are this weekend, the pre-medical meeting via Zoom is this Sunday, September 27th. If you haven't already, make sure you RSVP via Handshake, which is located on the Carroll Okta apps. And I believe there was an email sent out a while back regarding the pre-med meeting, and it has a link there. And if you haven't seen already, we actually have a Moodle page that everyone has been added to. It's titled Med 100, and that also has the links that provided there. These are resources for all of us and are constantly being updated. So definitely check them out. And as I said, the links are provided there. For freshmen and sophomore, as seen in the slides, the meeting will be held at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. For juniors and seniors, this meeting will be held at 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. And with that, we will welcome our guest speaker.
I have one question first.
Sure, yes.
On the meeting, I got pulled into work on Sunday because one of my coworkers is sick.
Mm-hmm.
I had to work Sunday. So is there like...
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I would recommend, I actually have a meeting with Wes tomorrow, and I was going to discuss this with him. I believe he will have a tentative I don't want to say not follow-up meeting, but a meeting for those who weren't able to attend. We really want people to attend these times, but I think I'll communicate with them that there may be some students who are unable to. So,
And there may be a situation where I can zoom into parts of it, but if I get a call, I will have to.
Yeah,
leave.
and I'll communicate that with him. And I believe he'll be sharing all of his resources. And if not, I'll request that for the students who or for everyone. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and with that, we'll welcome with great pleasure, Rebecca. So yeah.
Hi guys. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Sometimes my Wi-Fi is a little spotty, so just let me know if my sound breaks up or something. But I'm Becca. I'm a second-year med student in a pre-med or in a medical school that is 3 years long. So I'm at the Medical College of Wisconsin, and they have some satellite campuses that are 3 years long. So we go all year round for 3 years, and then we're done. And at our school, you can go into any specialty you'd like, but it's kind of more tailored to primary care just because it's easier to get all those requirements in 3 years, which saves a year of tuition, which is awesome. So I am gonna make this super informal because I really wanna have a lot of time for questions from you guys so that we can actually talk about stuff that you're interested in. And I'm not just rambling about stuff that I think you're interested in that you might not be. And I have my handy dandy notes so I don't forget to talk about some stuff. But so my journey to medicine is actually pretty traditional. I always knew that I wanted to be a doctor ever since I was a kid. So I went into college knowing that I was on the pre-med track. And even though a lot of people start out pre-med and then slowly like they fizzle out over the years, I knew that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I like set out to do, I guess. So I went to school at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, which if you don't know what school that is, it's massive. And I grew up in a pretty small town, so it was a big adjustment adjusting to a huge university like that with like 20,000 kids in your class. So it was kind of a struggle for me, especially OChem and some of the like major prereqs to get into med school. I passed all of them, but it was definitely a struggle and an adjustment going from high school level classes to huge university level classes. And it was to the point where I considered changing my my career path. I was like, there's no way I'm smart enough for this. I don't know how pre-meds are at your school. I'm sure they're not as bad as they were at my school, but everyone was like cutthroat competitive all 4 years. It was kind of a toxic environment. So I just was like, I don't fit in with these people. This isn't really for me. So I actually considered doing nursing, and I applied to the nursing program at my school and got denied. So I applied to 2 other nursing programs and got denied. And at the time I was like meltdown mode. I was like, how in the F am I going to get into medical school if I cannot even get into nursing school? But I kind of had like, not a midlife crisis, but a mid-college crisis. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to go for this, I'm going to go all in. And I started focusing more, partying less, and really just got to the books for my last 2 years of college. I mean, oops, sorry, it cut off for a second. And it paid off because I got my GPA up, and it allowed me to get into medical school. So I feel like this is just a perfect example of everything is going to work out just how you want it to. You just kind of have to trust the process. And looking back, I'm super glad that I didn't get accepted into nursing school, even though at the time I was just like devastated and was like, there's no way I'm going to get into med school. But some of the stuff that I did, I can talk more about that if you want me to, but I'm just going to go over to the extracurricular parts. So I did all of the stereotypical pre-med extracurricular stuff. I was in the pre-med club. I did cardiology club. I was in a bunch of different clubs. I was on the exec board for a bunch of them. I did do some cancer lab research. There's a huge cancer research facility in Madison at the school. So I did some cancer research. And then for my major, we had to do some like musculoskeletal research. My major was exercise science, so that's why we had to do that. And I also worked full-time at a sports med clinic while I was in school. And then these are just my stats. So I was I would say statistically, a very average applicant, which is why I encourage you not to look at Student Doctor Network or Reddit or any other website where they have you like comparing your stats to other people, because truly I don't think that numbers make as big a difference as your personal statement and your letters and the other stuff that you did throughout college, high school, whatever, that showed that you would be a good doctor. Let me make sure that was everything I wanted to say for this slide. I guess the other thing that I would say is don't just do something just to put it on your med school application. I think that the application committees can see through that when they see that you're a part of like 20 different clubs just to make it look like you're an active student. I think it's more important to have like a few things that you're really passionate about that you dedicated a lot of time to during college, rather than this long list of extracurriculars that don't really mean anything to you. And then one other note, we can talk more about this if you want, but I studied for my MCAT in about 3 months. Don't really recommend it. I recommend having a little bit more time than that. But that was my MCAT score in studying 3 months. So I was very happy about it. And then we can, okay, so the application part. So I know that some of you guys, or a lot of you, are freshmen or sophomores in school. And honestly, I was very clueless about this whole application interview process when I started. So I kind of had to learn as I went. But these are just some of the tidbits that I would say to you. So if you're applying next year, start your application in AMCAS, which is the application website where you submit your med school applications. There's a date that the application opens, like for you to start working on it, editing it, and then there's a date that you can start to submit it. I recommend that the day it opens to start working on it, you open it. I thought this took a lot of the stress out of applying for me, because I started working on it the day it opened, and I just added like a little bit to my application every single day, and it was not actually that stressful at all. And then what else do I have? Enjoy the process, yeah. And then your personal statement, honestly, I think this is the most important part of a med school application, because that's where the committee sees what you're all about and they can hear your voice. You can talk about how you struggled with something and how you overcame it. You can talk about why you want to be a doctor and why you'd be a good doctor. It means a lot more to have a good personal statement and good letters of recommendation than just have an awesome GPA or MCAT score. So really think about that when you're doing your extracurriculars or your classes or building relationships with professors. Make sure that you're not just building relationships with everyone, but that you're making meaningful connections and meaningful experiences that you can use for med school and in your interview. And then this third tidbit is, I don't know if you guys are aware that when you submit your med school application, you submit through AMCAS. So you do one application, then click all the schools you want to apply to. And then it costs money for every school you want to apply to. And then those applications get sent to the school. And if you meet the bare minimum requirements for that school, they're going to send you a secondary application. So most people get a secondary application from every single school. But why I put here only fill it out for the places you would actually go is because secondaries are really expensive. I think they were like 100, 150 for each school. So some people apply to like 30 schools, and that's just so much money. Personally, I applied to 2 medical schools, which is just crazy bananas, I know, but it's because my boyfriend at the time, now fiance, was a medical student at the school I go to, well, at the main campus of it. So he was at school at the Medical College of Wisconsin. He was a student there, and I really did not want to go far away from him because I knew that we were going to get engaged and be together, and I didn't want to do a long distance thing. And honestly, my mindset when I was applying was, if I don't get in this round, I'm going to wait till he's done with school and then I'll apply. So I only applied to the 2 Wisconsin medical schools, which I don't really recommend only applying to 2 schools because you want to have more eggs in the basket. But that's what I did. Not saying you should do that. But I know a lot of people who filled out applications in secondaries to like a crap load of schools, and then they would get in places and they were like, wait, I don't even know if I want to move to that city, or I don't even know if I like that program. So really make sure that you're only applying to places that if you get accepted, you would actually go there. It'll save yourself money. Something else to keep in mind is you only need one school to say yes to you. So when you're applying to schools, make sure that you're being realistic. Like I knew with my stats, I couldn't apply to Harvard and actually get in, or some of the top tier schools. So just keep that in mind. When Josh was applying, he applied to a lot of like top tier schools, which looking back, he's like, I don't know why I wasted all that money, because probably wouldn't have got in, probably wouldn't have gone there if he did get in. And then I don't really have a ton of interview tips because I did one interview. But the biggest thing, and talking to Josh, because I was getting some of his insight for all of this too, is that you just want to be yourself. If you get an interview at a school, which I know talking about this to freshmen and sophomores, you might feel like it's so far away, but it comes up really fast. If you get an interview at a school, that is awesome. And all you have to do is be yourself in the interview, and I bet you're going to get an offer. Don't try to be someone else. Be very genuine in your interviews, and I bet you're going to get an offer for a position. And then last bullet point is being waitlisted is okay. I was actually waitlisted and got pulled off the waitlist at my school. My school is I'm part of the 5th class, so it's a new campus, new satellite campus with a 3-year program. So they tend to accept a small number of people and have a long wait list, because a lot of people are a little bit nervous or don't want to do the 3-year program, so they pull a lot of people off the wait list. But being waitlisted is not the end of the world. Okay, I think that's all that I had for this. Yeah, that's all I had for that one. Okay, let's talk about what med school is actually like. So this is just like a write out of all the classes that my school does. So we have a crap load of classes our first year, and it's kind of an adjustment going from college to med school because the intensity is just insane. When I was in college, I was a perfectionist, and I wouldn't go into a test without being like, wow, I memorized all my notes. I totally understand all of this. I understand every single concept. And in med school, it's just not like that. You go into a test and you're like, holy crap, I know the main points and like some of the details, but if they ask different details, there's no way I'm going to pass this test, because there's just so much information, and it's designed to be that way. So you get really good at taking the main important pieces out of your textbook and out of lectures, because there's just no way you can learn all of the information that you get presented. So this is what you do in year 1. It's all of the basic sciences. Then the second year at my school is divided into systems. So each block we do a different system, have an exam. And then we don't have to talk a lot about STEP, but step 1 is the first boards exam that you take after your second year of med school. And then 3rd and 4th year, you're on the wards. You're in the hospitals, in the clinics all the time. You're out of the classroom, which is super great. And then this is just more about kind of the med school process. So you take your second boards, and then the residency application, match day stuff. We can talk more about that if you want to know, but I was very unfamiliar with all of this until I actually like got into med school. I didn't even know you took step 1 after your second year. And then just a reminder, extracurriculars are still a thing in med school, because they're, instead of being like pre-med club, German club, it's more like cardiology club, emergency medicine club, like kind of divided into the different medical specialties. I think that's all that I have. I hated anatomy lab. I don't know if you guys have dealt with like cadavers or any type of lab like that, but I was not a very big fan of it. I would always put Burt's Bees under my nose because I hated the smell. And I think that's all that I have for that slide. Okay, this was my schedule last year for my first year. So as you can see, I was done with school stuff by like 5 or 6 every single night. It is totally not true that you have to stay up all night, you don't sleep in med school, blah, blah, blah. If you're diligent with your time and really good at time management and studying and focusing during the day, there's no reason that you should not get a full night's sleep every night. So this was my normal schedule. And then kind of how I look at studying in med school is I treat it like a full-time job. So you have a lot of free time, especially your first 2 years of med school, because lectures are about 4 hours a day, sometimes 8 hours, but a lot of times it's 4 hours. So you have afternoons off and nights off. but that doesn't actually mean you have the night off. It just means you're expected to be studying all afternoon. So if you really treat it like a full-time job, it's not that bad. You can go to bed early. But I also know some people who are just super shitty with their time and spend all night studying because they did dumb stuff all day. So if you're good with your time, it's totally manageable. And then let's see. Yeah, that's all I have for this slide. Sorry, I'm just making sure I didn't forget anything. So clinicals, and again, we can go into more detail about all of this if you want to, but clinicals, so since my program's 3 years, they get us into the hospitals and clinics our first semester of med school when you don't know anything. But basically how clinical rotations, being in the hospitals works, because I was in them all summer, is in the hospital, when you get a new admit, you go in and see the patient first. You do the physical exam, you do the history, getting all their medical history, family history, all of that stuff, do the exam. And then on rounds, you present your patient in front of all the attendings and students, which is super intimidating when you've only had 1 year of medical school. Most people don't start rotations until their third year. But it's really great. You learn so much more being in the clinic and hospital than you do in lecture. It's sad, but it's true. And then like in a more of a clinic setting, usually the student will go in first, get the history, see why they're here, do the physical exam, and then present to the doctor and say what you think's wrong, how you think you want to treat them, what tests do you want to order, what blood work do you want to order, and then you both go in and see the patient together, and the doctor will say whether you're right or wrong, and it can be intimidating, but that's okay. You also, as a student, will write a lot of notes, which I didn't know what a medical note was until being in med school, and it's basically like the full patient history, the full history of present illness, which just means why are they in the hospital or in the ER or in the clinic today. It goes through family history, social history. They're super, super long. Epic, the electronic health record, has a lot of like filled in, you just click a button and it updates everything for you. But as a student, you have to actually type out all that stuff because they don't want you to just rely on computers to type out a patient note. And then after each clinical rotation, so after like 4 weeks of family med, 4 weeks of pediatrics, you take a shelf exam, which is basically like a standardized test to make sure that you pass that rotation and know how to take care of pediatric patients or how to take care of someone in the ER. Okay, that's all I have for that one. And then, oh, this is just stuff to know that I didn't know going into med school. So I had no idea what an OSCE was. To be honest, I still don't know what OSCE stands for, but it's, and I have to look it up every single time, but it's basically where it's like a simulated patient situation. As a medical student, you're gonna do a shit ton of these. So it's a simulated thing. There's a camera in the wall where doctors are watching you. There's a fake patient actor that's sitting in there and you have to walk in, wash your hands, be like, hi, I'm Becca, I'm the student doctor. Why are you here today? And it's all fake, but you have to pretend it's a real situation, do everything like you would if you were the actual doctor. And then after you do that, you go out and sit with the doctor, re-watch yourself, and they tell you everything you did wrong. So that's what an OSCE is, just so we're all aware, because I did not know. And then I went over what it means to write a note, because when we got to when we had our first like clinical thing in med school, they were like, okay, we're gonna practice writing notes today. And I was like, what the F is a note? I was like, oh my God. Let's see, your study styles are gonna change just because of the sheer volume of information. Like there is so much you have to learn. So I guarantee that your study style is gonna have to change a little bit to be more efficient, and be comfortable with the fact that you're not gonna know everything all the time. And you're gonna be behind most of the time because there's just so much to do. Enjoy the phase you're in right now. I know pre-med and undergrad is stressful, but I promise you, you're gonna look back and be like, holy crap, I had so much free time. It was so relaxing. Like I should have went out more. I should have done this and this, because once you're in med school, it all changes and your school kind of controls your schedule and controls everything you can do. So just enjoy the place you're at right now. And then go into med school with an open mind. I had multiple classmates who came to school and they were like, I'm going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon and no one's going to change my mind and blah, blah, blah. And then they do an OB-GYN rotation. They're like, oh, I want to be an OB actually. So I recommend that you go into med school with an open mind, like open to any specialty, open to any field, because once you get into the actual rotation, you're going to know if you like it or not, like within the first week of working it full time. And if you keep an open mind, you're going to be able to kind of find your true passion rather than just having this preformed thing that you think you want to do. Like, for example, Josh was, he went into med school wanting to be an orthopedic surgeon. Like, that's what he wanted to do. He worked for the NFL. He was an athletic trainer first. So he was all about sports med, wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, and then got into a surgery rotation and did not like it at all. And so now he's doing radiology and like just things shift. So you have to just have an open mind and be okay with your passions changing, because they probably will. Every single rotation I do, I'm like, oh, I want to do this now. Oh, I want to do this now, because you just like love it or hate it. It's super fun. But let's see. Okay, I think that was all I had for this slide. And then, okay, this is just more general advice. So the dean of our school on our first night, like our first day of med school, that night we had a little social thing, and he was like, I want you to write down your why right now and keep that with you. And I'm super dumb and didn't do it. I was like, this is so stupid. Like, why would I do this? But there have been so many days where I'm like, holy shit, why am I doing this? Why am I in med school? Why am I putting myself through this? This is terrible. And I wish I would have had that written down. So I want you to really write down and be like so detailed about why you want to go to med school in the first place, and keep it with you. So that days like that, you can open it up and be like, okay, it'll put it back in perspective, because I guarantee you're going to have days like that so often. And then just enjoy every step of the way, because everyone gets better. It does. And it also gets more stressful because you have, instead of fake patients, real patients that you're taking care of. But it's better, just more stressful. And then a couple other things, don't lose yourself in the process. And even though there's like the stereotype that all med students are like exhausted and have no time and just drink coffee and eat like crap and blah, 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 you can still do things that make you happy. You can still take care of yourself. You can still see family. You can still go on vacations. You can still do all of the things that make you happy, maybe just not as much. And really all of the pre-meds I talk to, I'm like, this is the number one piece of advice I have, is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself mentally, physically, do exercise, eat healthy, don't live off of Cheetos and coffee, and get some sleep, because if you are not taking care of yourself, you're not going to study your best. You're not going to be the best student you can. You're not going to be the best doctor you can, because everything's going to ramp up again once you become a resident. And if you don't have good wellness habits instilled in yourself during pre-med, during med school, during residency, it's just going to take a toll on you. And then if you have questions in the future that you don't want to ask right now or forget and think about later, you can find me on Instagram. I'm super active on there. And just send me a message. I think that's all that I've got. I hope that was interesting for you, at least a little bit.
No, that was great. Thank you, Becca. We'll open it up now to a question forum. If any of you guys on Zoom have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and just reach out.
Honestly, I'm open to answering any questions. No question is a dumb question, because I did not know anything about the med school process.
So I have a quick question. What was the hardest part like for you, like, or what caused you to go through, like, I guess, like the most like emotional strife in your med school journey?
In like pre-med, when I was talking about how I was maybe switching out of pre-med, or like in medical school?
In medical school.
Okay. The hardest part, I think, was just that first block. kind of adjusting to the volume of information that you're expected to know in med school. So at our school, you take 3 classes at a time when you're a first year. So I was in anatomy, lecture and lab, physiology, and biochem. Yeah, biochem. And then, so having to study for all those classes when there's just so much information in all of them. And then our exam week was all of those exams. So like the beginning of the block, it was okay, but then talking to other students and everyone was like comparing themselves and comparing their study schedules. And I feel like it was just scary not knowing how tests are in med school. So that first exam week was an absolute nightmare looking back. Just because there's so much uncertainty and you're like, wow, I'm studying so much, but I don't know if I'm studying well enough to do good on the tests. But I think it really helped that our school switched to a pass-fail grading system for the first 2 years, rather than the honors, high pass, whatever system, because it took a lot of stress off of us because there was less comparison between students and it was more just about knowing the information than hitting this super high rank in your class. So hopefully wherever you guys go to med school, they do that too. I think that's kind of across the board what they're switching to, just for student mental health, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good question.
Becca, did you see the question in the group chat part?
MD versus DO. So I honestly don't have a super strong opinion. I've met so many great MDs, so many great DOs. Personally, I knew that I wanted to do an MD program. And I think it was just because I was unfamiliar. Like I had never met a DO before applying to med school. So I was just like, oh, everyone's an MD. I just want to go the MD route. So I honestly didn't look into it even a little bit. But I know a lot of people who applied to both DO and MD schools, and I think they're very similar. Like the paths are so similar. You take all the same classes, you have to pass the same tests. I think where it differs a little bit is the residency aspect, because there's some residencies, more of the specialty residencies, that prefer MDs over DOs. And I'm not exactly sure why, but if you were thinking of doing like a really specialized thing or just want your options more open for residency, I think that MD is probably the way to go, but I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. I think people used to have these stereotypes about DOs, but I don't think it's as severe as it used to be. And I've met a lot of awesome DOs who are very, very smart and honestly just have more training in the manipulation stuff. But good question. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for that. You said to keep an open mind while being in med school, as we might change it. So shadowing in med school or during like pre-med, I guess I would just say, so my shadowing experience was very limited before I went to med school, because I knew I wanted to be a doctor, didn't know what kind. So I was like, I don't want to waste my time shadowing if like I want to do this, which looking back, pretty dumb. I recommend shadowing as many people as you can in as many specialties. And then people do still shadow in medical school, but honestly, I would say go diverse. Like don't focus on anything. Get as much experience in as many fields as you can, because you might be really surprised by what you're interested in. So I guess that would be my advice for that, is just go as diverse as you can. And once you get into medical school and are doing rotations, it's just really important to have an open mind going into them and not just the mindset of, oh, I don't want to do this specialty, so I'm not going to try very hard. And I don't really care what the attendings think of me. Just go into it pretending like that's what you want to do, and having that enthusiasm, and you might surprise yourself. Let's see. I hope that helps. Any other questions? Let's see.
I'm not sure if you talked about this or not, but did you apply to medical school your junior year, or did you take a gap year?
Oh yeah, I don't know how I forgot to say this. I took a gap year. So the December or the Christmas break of my senior year, decided that I wanted to apply to med school this year. And so I studied for the MCAT in the spring. I took my MCAT on a Saturday. I took my final exams the next week, and I graduated the next Saturday. And I do not recommend really doing that because I didn't have my MCAT score before I submitted my applications. But yeah, I took a gap year. So during my gap year, I moved to Milwaukee. I was living with Josh while he was in his second year of school, and I worked as a waitress at Buffalo Wild Wings, as a wellness coach, and as an ER tech. And honestly, working as an ER tech is the coolest job ever. If you can get into an ER, I did my CNA certificate during my gap year too, and that's how I got the job in the ER, because they were hiring either EMTs or CNAs as techs. And working as an ER tech, you get so much hands-on experience. Like, you get to start IVs, you get to help with codes, you get to put splints on people, you get to do so many things and learn so much, more than you would in most CNA positions. So 10 out of 10 recommend doing that if you're doing a gap year, or even if you need a job during school. ER tech is so much fun. And then my major was exercise science, kinesiology, which was like a very general major. Most majors are very general. I don't think your major really makes that much of a difference going into med school. There's a lot of people in my class that have wacky majors. Like, we've got a history major, a Spanish major, a gender and women's studies major. So I don't think your major really matters going into med school. I recommend you just get a major in something that you're really, really, really interested in, because it'll just make college more fun for you. Rather than doing, like, if you have no interest in plant biology, like, don't just get a bio major because that's what you think you're supposed to do. I recommend doing something you're really passionate about. I actually started as a bio major, and I realized I hate learning about photosynthesis in plants, so then I dropped that. But yeah, good question though. Anything else, guys?
What did you find to be most effective? What did you feel like you had to change in how you learn the material when you got into med school?
So I learned, so I never went to class at our school. They record all the lectures, and I realized I learn better when I can watch lectures on my own time and pause it when I need to, and watch it. Like, I just learn better when I'm sitting at my own desk, not surrounded by people. So I also watch lectures at double speed, which I watch everything at double speed just to save time. You'll probably learn to do that. But something else that has really helped me is using some of the resources that they have. I don't know if you guys are aware of, like, Pathoma or Anki, or using like Sketchy Micro, Sketchy Farm. I learned that I'm way more of like a visual and audio learner than just reading, or I learn better from videos than from just reading, like textbooks or reading notes and stuff. So I really got into the habit of, like, after lecture, I would look up Sketchy videos, and I would look up Pathoma videos, and I would do Anki cards about all the stuff we learned. And something else that I definitely had to do, because I was terrible about this in undergrad, is I was a huge procrastinator. Like, if we had a test in 2 weeks in undergrad, I could start studying like 2 days before the test and be totally fine. You cannot do that once you're in med school. Like, the day lectures start is the day you should be studying, reviewing the material, and constantly going over it, because it just piles on so fast. So staying up to date with lectures and just constantly reviewing stuff, and then using videos and flashcards helped me so much. And also learning that one of the other things in medical school is there's information and resource overload. They give you so many study tools and so many like different websites and different ways you can learn. and it's super overwhelming. So just figure out what works best for you, and you don't have to use all the resources. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing. Just focus on what works for you and stick with that and stop trying to do everything else. I think that's kind of where I struggled too, because I thought like, if we're learning about cardiology, I need to go over cardiology in this textbook and in this textbook and watch these videos and then do these flashcards and these flashcards. And I just figured out that I needed to use the resources that were best and then eliminate all the other like mediocre ones. Does that help?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, staying on top of the schoolwork is a huge one, because besides the lectures and stuff, there's a lot of other stuff you have to do in school, like clinical classes. We're in clinic one day every week, like a lot of extra classes besides the core lectures that you have to be a part of. So really just taking advantage of your time and staying on top of stuff. Anything else?
What has been your favorite part of your journey so far?
Well, my class is awesome. I really, really love my classmates. But also talking to pre-med students like you guys. I connect with a lot of people on social media who are going through the journey and really sharing the stuff that I did wrong. So I'm like, please don't do what I did. Like take more than 3 months to study for the MCAT, and just kind of sharing my, I guess, journey through it has really helped me, even though it's a little bit time consuming to like share my journey on social media through like med school. And I also still continue to do wellness coaching in med school. But I think the connections I've made, and also I have too many favorite parts of med school, because even though it's so stressful, but you also have days where like you go into clinic and you interact with patients and maybe you figure out exactly what's going on with them and you come up with a plan. And you're like, oh my gosh, if it was 6 months ago, I would have no idea what these drugs even are, or what these lab values even mean. So seeing how much you learn in such a short period of time, it's so rewarding. And like, it's just insane to me how in only 3 or 4 years you can go from being a normal person to a doctor, and just the sheer volume of information that you have to learn in those years and all of the training you have to go through in those years and then in residency. Sometimes you just kind of have to take a break and be like, oh my gosh, even though today was so hard, like look how far you've come. Like even if you're in your first year of undergrad, it's just part of the stepping stone, and you should be proud of where you're at, because you're going to look back and be like, oh my gosh, that was such a piece of cake at the time. Like, I don't know why I was so stressed about that plant biology test. Let's see. We'll have time for a couple more. COVID-19. Oh, yeah. COVID-19. So I am so fortunate that it did not affect our training much at all. So in the spring, when all the COVID stuff hit, all of our lectures and stuff got moved online. We weren't allowed in clinics for 1 day a week, it sucked, but it was okay. And our school actually let us back into the hospitals and clinics before most other places did. I know some places where they're still not allowing med students in. We were allowed to get back in June 1st. And I had a family medicine rotation in the month of June. And so there was a lot of virtual visits, which I had no idea how those went or how to even do a virtual visit. So I learned how to do that. And what else? Then I did an ER rotation this summer too. So as students, we're not allowed to see COVID patients. If they are suspected COVID or have tested positive, we're not allowed to see them. Working in the ER, every single patient was a COVID patient, and my preceptors, I feel like, didn't really care. So we were all gowned up, ready to go. We dealt with a lot of COVID patients. So it's been interesting to see, I guess, through all the different rotations we've done. And then I did a pediatrics rotation, but seeing how the hospitals have kind of had to adapt. But they've been great with students. Our school, and then this year for our school, because we have summer rotations, and now we're back to lectures every day and clinic 1 day a week. But most things are online. We still have some in-person sessions, obviously masked up, small groups like 6 students. But we're still allowed to be in clinics, which is great because everyone was really worried that that would delay our 3-year track by, like, if we had to miss any of our clinicals, because it's 3 years, it's cramped pretty tight. If you miss even a week, that can impact the requirements you need for your MD. But we've been so thankful, and how these changes might impact future. So I think, is anyone applying this cycle or this year?
I am.
Did you submit your application already, or are you applying this upcoming year?
So I submitted my primary and I'm finishing my secondaries right now.
So all interviews are online, right? Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. So I really don't know, like, for when you guys are starting med school next fall, how it's going to be. It's way too hard to say. I'm guessing they're still going to have everyone masked up. Hopefully you can be in person, especially for like anatomy lab and stuff. I know the first year students now are still able to do that in-person stuff. They're just doing small groups. But as far as interviews go, I was actually in a meeting a couple nights ago. They were talking about how to come across as yourself through a virtual interview. They were talking about residency stuff. And they were basically saying that everyone's so used to Zoom and virtual communication now that it shouldn't be terrible. And they want you to, how did they say it? They were just talking about how they want you to come across as like relaxed, and if you're a hand talker, like I'm very much a hand talker, they're like, if you're a hand talker, still do that. Don't feel like you just have to like sit still and have this super professional background. They also said that they want to see, which I thought this was kind of weird, but they want to see not your apartment, but they don't want it to be just like a blank white wall behind you. My computer's sitting on my bed right now. I'm like not at a desk, but they want to see like stuff behind you, so it's not just like a driver's license photo. So that's just something to keep in mind for interviews. But yeah, I am not really sure how it's gonna go. It's just a big bummer. I'm sorry you guys have to go through it this year online, but what can you do?
Yeah, I think we got for like one more question. So if anyone's got one more to wrap us up, now's your chance.
What was your major again?
It was exercise science.
Okay.
I'm just trying to see if I have any like interesting things that I forgot to talk about. Yeah.
How did you manage your time frame when studying within those 3 months for the MCAT? Because
For the-
of the concise, yeah.
I recommend taking a lot more time to study for it, just so you don't have to be as stressed as I was. But how I did it is I got up in the morning at 4 in the morning because I was working full-time. I worked full-time at the sports med clinic. I had a full 16 credit schedule for my senior year. And I was doing research. So I didn't have time during the day to study. So I got up at 4 a.m. every morning and studied from 4 in the morning until 8 in the morning, every single day for those 3 months. I would take 1 day off a week, but every other day, 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. is how I studied. I went through the Kaplan books. Actually, I used the Kaplan books that Josh used because I had no money to buy anything. So I used his books, I used the Kaplan flashcards, went through all of them, and did as many practice tests as I possibly could in those 3 months, because you learn a lot reading through like Kaplan or whatever the other books are, but where you really learn how to do well on the test is through practice questions and through practice tests. So I did as many of those as I possibly could. but yeah, I just use my morning time to study every single day. And I recommend stretching it out to maybe like 6 months so that you can really take your time and just do a little bit every day rather than like big 4-hour chunks every single day. But practice questions and practice tests, gold star next to that, because you can know everything in the textbook, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do great on the actual test, because they ask questions in just a different way, and it's a different way of thinking about everything. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Of course.
That's great. I think with that we'll end the meeting today because we're cruxing around 6:30. So thank you so much, Becca, for meeting with us today. That was extremely helpful and enlightening for all of us. So we really appreciate you carving out that time in your schedule to meet with us today.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and so with that, that's a perfect question to end on, because that's transitioning to next week's topic is going to be study and organization strategy. Becca, we'd love actually to talk with you afterward to see some of the strategies you have and getting some of those resources so we can share them with next week's meeting. I think that'd be great. But we will be discussing that. So next week's lecture would be a really good one to be in person at, because we're going to do some speed networking, socially distanced, but in person. And we might play some games as well afterwards. So that's what we're planning for next week's meeting topic.
Yeah, and with that, our parting message this week is, when you shut out the noise, commit to the grind, and add a touch of competitive energy, you are going to see the results. So thank you all for being here today, and also special thanks to Rebecca for taking the time to share her life story in her pursuit of the medical degree. So yeah.
Have a good weekend, you guys. You don't have to sanitize your computer unless you're using it a lot, but you can if you want to. Otherwise, take care. Have a good evening.